In this episode of Carnage, the Trovo runs and drives. Okay, it just runs. So let's recap. We bought this 1983 Volvo 240 sedan with a Toyota twin turbo 1JZ in it. A 1JZ is a 2.5 litre straight six, makes about 206 kilowatts from the factory, so they are a pretty good thing, but they can make a whole lot more. So when we get this thing boosted up, it's going to make some serious power. Now we bought it as an unfinished project for $1,000. So there's been a lot of unfinished work, random holes to fill, and now we've discovered the fuel tank is full of rust. So we've had to order a brand new fuel tank from the States. It'll be here shortly, but in the meantime, let's get it wired up, plumbed up, and when that tank arrives, we'll get it fired up, finally get this thing running. So instead of me talking about it, let's just do it. Now, first job for this morning is to mount our Haltech ECU. Just be aware, you've got to keep this end a little bit clearer because that's where you're going to plug in your connectors from your loom and also the map/boost line. I want to put that on the floor in front of the shifter, but because we haven't done our shifter cable yet, I don't know how much room we have to play with. So I have to do the shifter cable first, and then I'll be able to put this in position and make sure we've got enough room for those connectors to plug in. So we've got our Haltech ECU mounted, but we've also got this fuse box to find a home for, but it's proving a little bit more difficult. So I'm having a bit of a look under the dash here to see where we can put it. And I figure that the best spot for it is right behind the fuse panel is this funky little vent, which I don't think we're going to need anyway, and it's kind of the best spot for the little fuse box. So I figure, let's make a flat panel in that shape, and we'll just screw that in place and then put our fuse box on that. It's just going to be the simplest solution to the problem, because everywhere else is just, it's too full under there. There's too much going on under the dash of that Volvo. So hopefully that's right. Looks pretty close. It's going to come around there, I reckon. And then probably, so as high as possible, I guess, is the point. So now that we've got the Haltech ECU and fuse box mounted, it is time to do the igniter box, which means this has to be fed through the firewall, which Kian's going to do this time. I'm sick of crawling in the car. It's a boy. So this part stays in the cabin. This part goes to the ignition, obviously, to the coils. So 6 coils, 6 plugs, plus an earth. So you want to go above, cool. Ticking those boxes. Now we're going to find a home for that and It's not getting any easier. Real estate is filling up rapidly. After much deliberation, I've finally worked out where we're going to put the igniter, and that is on top of the glove box. I can't pull the glove box out because the igniter stops that. To pull it out, I'd have to undo these bolts, which I don't want to do. But anyway, it's there, it's done. All we have to do now is screw the glove box back in and close her up. Can't plug it in yet, need to load the software in the ECU first. And to do all that, I've got to plug in some stuff on the engine. So let's go do that. Let's talk air temp sensors. This is the factory air temp sensor, and it goes in there, in that hole where we've got it blocked off. It does not plug into our Haltech loom, so bang, in the garbage. I had trouble trying to find a sensor that would go into that hole and connect to this connector. That would have been easy, but can't find one. So I found one that goes into a 1/8 MPT hole, which is fine, but again, the plug is different to this one. So we're going to have to cut this plug off and re-terminate it with the appropriate plug, which is right here, came with the sensor. Then I look at the wiring. Now I was just going to terminate it as per that. That's what the way it would have plugged in. So hey, let's wire it the same. No, the grey wire is our signal wire, all good. But if we look at the sensor diagram from Raceworks, their sensor is the other way around. So I'm going to have to switch the signal and ground wires around when I re-terminate it. Signal on the left, ground on the right. And then that should go in like that. Click. Yep. Now that can go in there, like so. And I think that's pretty much all the wires and sensors on the engine. Well, we've done most of the wiring up the front, so I figure it's time to put our fuel pump and filter in, and that goes pretty much right there. What I'm going to have to do is terminate those wires for our fuel pump though. So now our pump and filter is in. I'm going to start putting some lines in. So this 1/2 inch rubber line, it's E85 compatible in case we go that way down the track. So I've just run it through into its loop there, ready to go into the tank when that arrives. Unfortunately, it hasn't left the States yet, I found out this morning, but should be leaving today, hopefully. The joys of ordering stuff from online. Okay, so to get this 1/2 inch line onto our fitting, it's nice and tight. This stuff's only -6, but you know, if we run out of fuel capacity later down the track, you know, we can go to -8 on this line as well, but I don't see the need at the moment. I think -6 will give us pretty much everything we need. So got a 180 bend there to go on the back of the filter. For the moment, I'm just going to cable tie this in here, and then I'll look at P-clamping it later, but we'll get it in position first. So I'm just going to have it go on top of the chassis rail there, then we go to the front of our fuel rail. So we'll have a -6 feed feeding the rail. We'll go through obviously to the injectors and then exit the other end and come to our regulator, which is here. It's going to go into our regulator and then down out to our return. So now we've just got to do our return line, which is actually this steel line here. So what I might do is undo that, snip this return line off here, and just run a hose from there down to this return line and just reuse that basically. Just cut a short piece of hose, put a hose end on it for this end, will be sweet. I have wired in our battery cables. So there's an earth cable which goes down to the chassis. So earth to chassis and then chassis to engine. So nice thick earth cable. Then there's our positive cable as well. It'll go on our battery. So the last two wires that we've got are these ECU wires basically. So earth and then power. So we're going to connect these to these terminals and then plug a battery into this thing and see if we can talk to the ECU. So just talking about wiring and stuff as well, rather than have the thermofan just on a switch on the dash, I've used this digital output here, digital pulsed output it's called. I've terminated a plug, run to this relay so we can control that through the ECU now. So it'll hit a temperature, thermofan will come on, reach a temperature, it'll switch off. All automatic. I will tidy up some of this a bit later, but in the meantime, we can find out if this thing will work. So we've got some power. Let's go have a look on the inside and see what we've got to do there. Let's plug in our ECU wire, which will be this one here. Okay. Ken, you want to do the honors? If you flick the key, just until the light comes on. Okay, something blue, but not our fuse. All right, keep going. Okay, and down here you will see a light on the ECU. Now we've got power to the ECU, it's time to break out this bad boy. Little Haltech USB stick. It has all your base maps, basically everything that you need, including this program to load your software and tune the ECU. So we'll plug that in. Now we've got the power on the car, we've turned the ignition on. We better plug in our ECU. We'll use it on one of these USB ports over here. Hit connect. Let's see what happens. There we go. I don't think this has the right map in it, so it's got a map. Yeah, wasted spark, I need direct fire. So let's load in a map. So upload map, go down here to Toyota, go Sora, 1JZ, direct fire is what we want, because we have 6 coils. All right, looks like it's got a different map in there. Question is, how do we know this is actually talking to anything? Let's have a look at our TPS. So there's our TPS measurement. It's saying 0 at the moment. Let's go tweak the throttle and see if anything happens. Did that change? Awesome. So the computer is definitely talking to the engine. So it's seeing the TPS, so that's a good start. So let's have a look at some of the other stuff. We want to set up a thermofan because we've already wired it in. Let's have a look. So if I click here, and these are all the extras that you can add, and there's your active items. If I come down here to thermofan, click that, click the arrow to put it across into that menu, hit OK, and it should be in our menu now. So if we go up here, there we go, thermofan, hasn't been assigned an output, so we'll put edit connection. We already know it's DP04, so we'll select that, hit OK, and it is now DP04. So now we can go into our thermofan settings. The moment it's running off, the trigger source is the coolant temp sensor, which is plugged in obviously. It's saying enable above 85 degrees Celsius, disable below 83. So if it hits 85, it'll switch on. Once it gets to 83, it'll switch off. But does it work at all? That is the test. So I guess if we reduce this to 0, and maybe that one as well. So yeah, no, they've got to be actually, let's make that, so it's got to be above, so all right. So if I hit apply, thermofan works. How good's that? Now we need to wire in our fuel pump, we need to wire in our starter relay, and I think we should be ready to test some stuff. Once we've wired in a fuel pump, we can do a fuel test, make sure that we don't have any leaks or anything. Once we've got the starter relay hooked in, possibly we could start this thing. I'm going to pull the spark plugs out so we can wind some oil pressure into this thing. Plus I'd love to see that the oil pressure sensor is actually working too. Okay, so we're about to wind this thing over on the starter motor, see if we can get some oil pressure on that. We've got our diagnostics page up on our laptop. We're just looking over here for our kilopascals. I'd like to set it up for PSI, but I'm still working this out. But if we see, 100, 200 kilopascals of oil pressure, that's something. I'll be happy with that. So, Ken, do you want to go and hit the key and see what we see? It's winding over very slow. Just wind her over for us. It's winding over very slow. All right, stop. Unless it's got a dud starter. Don't know. Maybe we'll pull the starter motor out of this thing, do a test, see if it actually spins a bit more freely. So pulled this dinky little starter motor out. It does look pretty, yeah, how you going? Probably not any better after I dropped it out of the car from a great height, but we'll whack the jump pack on it and see if it still turns over slowly or if it spins freely. I mean, it's spinning pretty free, but it shouldn't have smoke coming out of it. I think there's something wrong with that, and that is really hot. I think we need a new starter motor. So, it appears our starter motor is kaput. Smoke coming out is never a good sign. But we do have a solution. Pop down to Max Performance, because one of the boys down there play with 1JZs, but while he didn't have a starter motor, they put in a quick call to Burson's, and they have one in stock. $205, nice and cheap. So we'll get that in the car. It'll be here in an hour, so that'll be great. All right, let's sort out our fuel pump situation and wire that up. And in theory, we could fire this thing up today. All right, some petrol. That's our main feed hose and that's our return hose. Stick them both in there. And we'll do a fuel pump test. Let's see if we're going to have fuel go everywhere. Here's the pressure. Got the fuel pressure coming up. That is a solid 3 bar. That's exactly where we want it. Don't even need to change it. Fuel pump works. If we go around here, we should be able to see fuel returning. Yeah, if you can just see there, we have a solid stream of fuel returning to the can. And you can hear the pump whirring away there nicely. No fittings are leaking, no injectors are leaking. That is perfect. Okay, now we have a fuel pump working. Let's get some oil pressure in this thing. We've got the new starter motor in. Let's crank her over, see if we can get some oil pressure. So, we tried this once before, killed the starter motor. Let's try it again. Ken, you want to do the honours?
Give it a crank.
It's starting to come up. Here it comes, here it comes. Yep. Yes, oil pressure. Got to say I was getting a little bit worried there for a second because it was taking a while for that oil pressure to come up, but you know, engine has been dry for a long time, so we persevered and it's come good and I'm very happy with that. So just going to put these spark plugs back in. Obviously we've got a bit of anti-seize on the threads, being an alloy head and all that. We are almost there. It's kind of the moment of truth. Let's plug that HPI 6 in, see if we can fire it up. goes the one way. Yep. There we go. We are plugged in. Let's see what happens. This is literally the first time we're going to try and start this. Pump prime. Fuel pump on. Here we go. Numb. It's so close. It's gonna start. I know it's gonna start. So, we think we know what the problem is. It turns out there is no non-VVTi base map. We have a 1JZ non-VVTi motor, but Haltech doesn't do a non-VVTi base map. They do a 2JZ non-VVTi base map. So what we've done is we've imported the ignition portion of that 2JZ map into our 1JZ file. Hopefully this will work. Legitimately, I haven't even tested. I'm about to hit the key again. We'll see if this thing fires. I don't know. Hold on to your hats. Yes! Woo! Come on, baby. Come on. Nah, it coughed. It did cough. All right, we will get this thing running yet. Okay. We think we know what the problem was. So, remember how we put bigger injectors in this? The computer thinks we had 370cc injectors when we actually have 1150cc injectors. So, yeah, the computer's trying to jam all this fuel in it and it's not liking it. So, let's see if this makes a difference. Oh. Yes! 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 Woo! It lives. Of course, the temptation is to just drive it out the front, do a skid, but we can't do that because it hasn't got any coolant in it at the moment. We've still got to do the heater hoses. We haven't got power steering lines. So there's a lot left to do, including tidying up the wiring inside, put the seat back in it. We've got no wiring running to the dash at all, so nothing's talking to the actual instrument cluster of the Volvo dash. So we need to hook all that up. The fuel tank is still on its way from the States. We ordered it 2.5 weeks ago. It left the warehouse yesterday. So it's still on its way. So once that gets here, we can put the tank in, hook up the lines properly. By that time, we should be able to, take it to the dyno, run her up on the dyno and see what it makes stock. Obviously, we've got to do an exhaust system as well. There is a lot to do, but you're gonna see all that in a future episode of Carnage. It lives!